and we have an incredible presentation with Gia Goodrich. She's an award-winning fashion, beauty, and editorial photographer and a YouTube star, and she's presenting on becoming magnetic in video, how to look great and sound great, just generally be great on video. You might be able to tell I've watched some of her stuff before, so if you want to be as awesome as I am, you're going to want to watch the next presentation. All this content is going to be available after the summit. So if you do want to network and you're struggling, like, oh, I want to see Gia, I want to network, you can do both. I should stop talking now. So networking now, also Gia. So I'll be back soon, and I'm heading it over to Gia. Bye-bye. And hello, Gia.
Hello. Oh my gosh, I love that. Not to toot my own horn, but I've watched a couple videos.
You're amazing. How could I not?
You are amazing and kind, and I love you. Yeah, I'm ready to get going. Are we ready?
Yes, you take it away. I'm going to go away now.
Perfect. Okay, sounds good. Hi, everyone. I am just going to get my screen share started. Oh, but I need screen share permissions from these amazing hosts any second now. The one thing I'll say is I was just hanging out in the chat, and it sounds like all of you are really engaged and awesome, and I'm super excited for that. And here we go. I'm excited to do this. All right. Perfect. So I'm going to pop myself down here. So if you're just tuning in, this is me in that little corner on the bottom. And I know you've already been chatting in the chat roll, but if you can just keep going with this is your little prompt for today. If you can add your name, pronouns, your role, so whatever it is in your industry that you do, that you're loving doing, and why you're here in this particular one, right? So my example is Gia, she, hers. I'm a photographer director, and I want to be more comfortable in Zoom meetings, right? So just go ahead and add that, and I'm going to check on these and see what you're doing, because I love, love, love that. Okay. And then the one reason, in case you're asking yourself, why are we doing pronouns? And even though this is, you know, a lot of women here, I just think it's a really great practice to get into, to put that next to your name, because it really signifies that you are a part of and with it, and understanding that there's a gender spectrum, and really being gracious around that. So adding that is super powerful and amazing. All right. Lastly, grab a notepad and pen if you don't already have one, because I'm going to just like launch all the knowledge on ya, and I want to make sure that you retain it. You know what I mean? And the question of the day, as we go through this, you can add it in the chat if you automatically know what the answer is, or you can just kind of quietly be thinking about it. What is holding you back from creating a magnetic online presence with video? Now, some of you might not be 100% sold on why you should start using video to grow your personal brand. And if not, we're going to tackle that a little bit today. But if you are, for a lot of us, there's going to be something that is holding us back, right? And in psychology, we have this expression, name it and tame it, right? It's only when you bring it to the surface, you understand what those stories are that are holding you back, that then we can start unpacking it and getting it going. And I love it. Paula, Lisa, so many awesome people in here. That's great. All right. And if you don't know me, my name is Gia Goodrich. I am a photographer, director, now brand coach with video, and I am super passionate about helping people show up online, feel super confident in being their awesome, amazing selves, and emanating with that wonderful, authentic energy. So that is my passion. That is what I love to do. And you can obviously see I'm a bit of a dork, and just, you know, lead with the truth, because there's no sense in hiding it. So as Rebecca said, I am a commercial photographer. And at this point, I have photographed thousands of women, and I've done so for hundreds of brands. And I've noticed that there are some patterns. First of all, most people feel uncomfortable and awkward in front of the camera. And second of all, a lot of the tools, tips, techniques, strategies that we use aren't commonly known. And what I found is once I help people with those and really show them some of these things that are just so easy to do, but we just don't know if we're not in the industry, it helps them really emanate with that amazing confidence. So that's my goal today. And you can find me on YouTube, where every week I'm creating video content and teaching around this subject. And lastly, if you are on Instagram, feel free to connect with me there. I love talking to all of you, hearing your stories, and it's also a great way for me to get ideas on what I can teach next. So feel free to add anything in the chat that you have, questions, anything that sounds interesting to you. And I love all these people showing up. You are all awesome. Okay, so in today's workshop, what are we going to cover? 1, how to look better in video, because duh, we all want to learn how to do that. 2, understanding your charisma. What is going to make you special and unique and worth watching? 3, how to build your personal brand. Now, of course, these are all like huge topics that I could talk for days on, but I'm going to give you a distilled version to give you some solid nuggets that you can leverage in our new COVID reality, where so much of what we're doing has to do with showing up on a computer screen. And then my favorites, we're going to do questions. Now, hopefully, I just saw that the last one, there wasn't time for questions, and it was such a good workshop. I loved it. I was chiming in on the chat. I'm going to try to give us some time for questions, but you never know. So why video? If you're not totally sold, here are my thoughts on it. 1, it creates leverage. It gives you a way to position yourself so you're worth a bit more. The perception of your worth is more. 2, you're building your own audience. Now, a great misconception that we have is it's like about big numbers, right? Thousands of people, hundreds of thousands. Not at all. When it comes to audience, really, there's this great story, and I have ADHD, so I can get into stories a lot, so I'm going to keep it short. But I did an interview recently for the Daily List Report, which is a YouTube show, and I watched one of their other shows, and it was a real estate agent named Karen Carr, who's in, I think, North Carolina. And when she started her YouTube channel, she only had 8 followers. And she had somebody knock on her door who had just moved and said, hey, we don't need to like meet you anything. We just want to sign papers. We want to work with you because we saw one of our videos and we love you, the end. Now, when in life does that happen, that you have somebody who's just like signed, ready to go and loves you? It happens when you can create touch points for people with video. So it helps you build an audience. It creates a context for what you do. So if we think about in our world, we understand, a lot of us, what the thing is, right? But we don't understand the process, what it takes to get there. So for a designer, for example, if you designed this thing in this way and everybody's like, oh, that's cool, but you're like, no, let me tell you why. We designed it in this sleek way so that it better fits in your hand, you know, blah, blah, blah. But all of that stuff really helps with the value and people really understanding. Then it makes it so that there is no competition. And if you're familiar at all with this idea of blue ocean strategy, it really means that instead of creating these like bloody red and blood infested waters, it's really about creating your own lane. The more you are, the more you double down on that, the less anybody else can touch you, right? All right, so lastly, I will say, this is kind of coming back to leverage point. Let's imagine you are hiring somebody, right, which a lot of you have. Let's imagine you're hiring somebody and you go and Google your candidate, right? So this is my friend, Nina Spring, and I love her, not to pick on her or anything. But when you look at it, all it says is her name, like a Facebook page, a LinkedIn profile, yada, yada, right? Versus me, where you immediately have all these videos coming up. You have some words here, and then you have what I do. Being able to immediately dive in, get context, hear somebody speak in their own words is just, it's a huge shortcut to being able to create that kind of connection and ultimately power. So let's start with, how do we look better in video? Now, 3 things we're going to talk about. 1, quality of light. 2, camera angles. And 3, your background. And just getting all of these 3 things together. And again, I can go in depth with all of these. I have YouTube videos on all of these, but we're going to just give you like the nuts and bolts so you can really dial things in. So when we're talking about light, we're talking about a key light. Now, what does this mean? It's the main source of light in your photography and video. And it comes from cinema and it comes from stills. And it just mainly means the big light source that's hitting you. So in my background, you can see, I think we can see me if we cut back to me. I have this key light that's hitting me. That's a mixture of two lights that I'm going to talk to you about. And then I have this little light in the background that's called like a motivated light or a practical. And then I actually have a light that's hitting the background that's adding a little bit of a pink cast. I'm a maximalist, so everything is done like to 100. But that is not at all what you need to do. But notice how I'm layering the light and having different things going on. But the key light is the main light that's lighting me, and this is the one we're going to talk about today. So this is me looking suboptimal in Zoom, and this is with no key light. And what do we notice? Well, we have grain, and we can think about grain as a webcam, the equivalent of it trying to squint to see something. Grain means that the camera is straining, that there isn't the optimal amount of light in the frame. And so you'll notice it starts to become squidgy and get textured, and you'll start to see kind of as you move, it won't move with you as well. And we're trying to really eliminate grain by getting the light in the sweet spot for whatever camera you're using. It also is focusing on the background. And this is because our eyes, and this is just the way we're wired, usually will go to the brightest part of the frame. So right now, because there's a window a little bit to the side here, this is a really big hot spot. And also to the other side, there's this kind of yellow cast from my kitchen light. And both of those light sources are going to draw your eyes. So instead of you being able to really focus on me and what I'm saying, your eyes are continually being pulled toward the back there. And lastly, it's raking light. We're going to talk about what raking means, but I hope you burn it in your brain and just say no to raking light. So what is the best light for video? This is the question. And when I say video, I'm meaning if you want to create YouTube videos, if you're talking to your phone, if you're on your webcam for Zoom meetings, all of the above. Sail. Right? So again, I love like making things easy, giving us little acronyms, right? So sail is what we're going to land on. And I'm going to go through these to really burn it into your brain. Sail means soft, angled from above, in front, and large. Those are the four characteristics that if we have all four of those, we will really get beautiful light that will work every time. So when we say soft, what we're really looking at is if you look in this nose area, the difference between both of those shadows, it means that all of those beams are coming from one direction and they're all moving like really harshly in the same way. So we can think about this as like the 12 o'clock sun, where it's just like harsh and unflattering and all that kind of stuff is going on. Versus a soft light source, or sometimes you'll hear it referred to as diffuse, which means that all the light beams are being scattered through something. And in that scattering, they become soft because they're hitting you from all these different angles. The most diffused light that we see every day that we're super familiar with, well, every day depending on where you live. I'm currently in the Pacific Northwest, so I see it every damn day. Are clouds, right? So they're taking the sunlight, they're scattering them across all these different angles, and then they're hitting us. So what that means is that we're not going to see these harsh shadows because it's all scattered beautifully. And even though this model has like zero wrinkles, zero anything, we can see a little bit when we come to the neck region. See how it just pulls out a little bit more texture there versus over here. This soft light is forgiving and beautiful and fabulous. So we want to go with soft. Oh, and this is a great example from one of my YouTube videos. You can see this hard light here. Even though it's a bigger light source, look at this transition here and all of this. You can even see these little like freckle bumps on my nose and even in my lips, right? Then in this case, and I have a video called a $20 Walmart hack to basically create this diffusion or this softening material for your light. And this was just a shower curtain, a frosted shower curtain. And you can see how it just softens everything. Now, there's still something wrong with this light that we're going to move into in a couple here. The next is angled from above. So this is the A in sail. And the reason for that is because if you think about the sky, right? If you think about what's normal to us as human beings, light sources come, unless we're talking about fire, right? At night, light sources come from up top, right? From the sky. So that's really what feels the most natural to us. That's really what our brains prefer and really makes sense. This is why if you look at the right, on the right-hand side, you'll see this is a ring light. And this is a mistake I see people using. It's not that you can't use a ring light, okay? So if you have one, it's totally cool, you can use it. But a ring light placed like this so that it's totally flat is going to create this brightening of everything, and it pulls out all of this texture. So you can see this characteristic ring light little spot here, and then you can see it just, I mean, and this is like a young person with barely a wrinkle on her, and she already is like looking real rough. Versus this one here, where you can see the angle is coming from about a 45 degrees. And the reason it's called a butterfly light, if you look in cinema, is because of this little shadow here. It looks like a butterfly, right? But look down here. Now, of course, again, she doesn't probably have any wrinkles on her neck, but if you have any little extra padding but underneath your chin, or you have any wrinkles there, this is really where we love to create shadow. This kind of light sculpts us and makes us look really, really beautiful. So we want to think about having our light sources come from above. Now, there is too much of a good thing. So you don't want it to be like straight overhead, because that light is very scary. But we want to think about coming from above at about a 45-degree angle, hitting the main plane of our face. Next is the angle of light. And when we want the light to come in front, and this is why. When we look at on this orange that we know is super textured, you can see that a lot of the texture is minimized by it being lit evenly. We also, when we look at the shadows, we can tell it's a diffuse light, it's soft light, because we're not seeing those harsh shadows there. Then when we look at this side light, what we're seeing is that the light is, and this is where it's called raking. This comes from the photography landscape, and you can think of it, it literally is raking across your skin. Yeah, fun, good times. And that kind of intense raking is great if you're a photographer and you're needing to pull texture out of a leather glove, but it's not great for us, right? We don't want to have this type of really intense texture pulling, because it will make us look like we have all sorts of life lived on our face that we haven't actually lived, right? So we want to have our light sources be in front. Now, the other thing that I'll just say really quickly is that a lot of times if you Google, you know, lighting and blah, 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 a lot of it is taught by men. And so they'll tell you to pull light sources off to the side to sculpt and all of this kind of stuff. And it's raking light, it's pulling texture. And there's a tiny bit of misogyny in that, which is because if you look at like cinema and people like Matthew McConaughey, right, where it's like, men are seen to look older and more dapper and amazing as they age, and women are seen to be haggard and unattractive and need to be invisible as they age, right? Deep misogyny in here. And that kind of light that pulls out the texture, yes, it adds character, but it's not particularly flattering in this way. So if you do want character, you can practice and really experiment with what angle you want your light, but for the most flattering, we want to keep it in front. And when we're talking about light source, we want a large light source. And this is why. When you have a big light source here, you're seeing light scattered from all these different angles as it hits you. It's also going to wrap around you and really light all these areas behind. When we look at a smaller, harder light source, and smaller sources are hard by default, and it's because all the angles are coming in from one direction, and a lot of times you get those harsh shadows, and it's not going to be lighting up everything else. So we want to get a big light source. All right, so what's the best when? Window light. I am actually right now, you might be able to hear, I have a garbage truck right outside my window because anytime you're trying to do something that needs sensitive audio, you're going to have somebody out there with tambourines and motorcycles making your job like ridiculous. But having yourself positioned in front of a big window hits all of our sail, right? It's soft, it's angled from above, it's in front, and it's large. And so this is that optimal light that most of us have that we're just not leveraging. Now, this is that same moment, but using the window as a key light. And you can see the difference is immediate, right? We are now able to focus on my face because that's the brightest spot in the frame. We're also, there's all of this light spilling into here. So it's also lit, but not overly lit. So we can really, in design, it's called a hierarchy of information. You can really see what is meant to be focused on. clear quality video. There's not going to be as much grain because the camera isn't trying to squint to get information. It already has that optimum amount of light. And then it's flattering for all the reasons we talked about before. Now, what happens if you don't have a window, or you live in a New York City apartment or in a basement or something like that, where the idea of doing that kind of big, bold light isn't going to be possible? Well, you can use the same principles, but have different modifiers, as they're called. So if you want to go in the photo video realm, this is the one I really recommend. These are called shoot-through umbrellas, which means that the light is here. The light is then diffused like a cloud. It's softened through this umbrella, and then you place your face on the other side of it. And you can position them side by side, angled down to you at a 45-degree angle, and that will do a really good job of mimicking natural light, especially if they're daylight balanced bulb. And again, I have a YouTube video about it if it's at all confusing. Now, the next one are these lanterns, and this is my favorite. Just did a YouTube video about it, called the Gia ball. I coined it because I'm a dork, and it's a paper lantern, of course, like that's not rocket science, but it's souped up a little bit by mixing the photo video tech with the paper lantern, and it ends up being under $100. It's super awesome. And you get this big lantern, you put the photo and video bulbs in it so they're bright. They also have a different spiral shape, as you can see here. And so the light just comes out a little bit differently. And it is just so beautiful because it also fits in your home decor. That's the part that's like amazing to me, because everything else is like gross and you have to move it around and it's hassle, whereas this can just live there and feel like it's supposed to be there, and then turn it on and you look great in video. So this is the Gia ball as a key, and you can see it's very, very similar to the light. Okay, and then these are the two mistakes that I see very, very often with lighting in general, and I want to make sure that we go over these. One is backlight, and this is an extreme example, but I see it really often. I even saw it a little bit today, which of course, no judgment, because we are all showing up using the tools we have available, and done is better than perfect. But just so you know, when the light sources are coming from behind you, this is what happens. The sensor struggles to pull back and forth to figure out what it should focus on. And a lot of times you become a grainy mess, and it actually becomes straining on the eyes as well. Then the other one is, like we talked about, that raking light that rakes across your skin and pulls out all the texture. So trying to minimize these two mistakes will really just automatically lift you up into the realm of showing up better in video. Let's talk about angles, and I hope you appreciate, let me know in the chat if you appreciate that I made these photos for you to demonstrate this, because yeah, my under eye bags are in full effect. You're welcome. Now, I want you to think about what are these three different angles, and you probably internally in your mind already have a good idea of where the phone is in this case, where these three angles are. So one is a lower angle, of course, no angle, which means it's about in the middle, and then a high angle. Now, these are extremes, but I see this happening a lot. So here's the key thing to understand about angles when it comes to video and all of this kind of things. That whatever is further from the camera is going to seem smaller, and whatever is closer to the camera is going to seem bigger. Now, if you're thinking like, okay, but my phone, like I'll use my phone here, okay, but my phone is like the same to me, whatever, I don't understand why I'm getting these extreme angles. It's because even these subtle rocking back or rocking toward, that creates a difference between where the camera lens is. And that is what causes distortion, right? And starts making you look crazy. Think about this. Where is your laptop usually positioned? Well, it's usually positioned low on your desk and angled back. What that means is that what's going to be closest to the camera is all your bottom stuff, right? So like your, what is this called? Under chin? Under chin? Yeah, I just made that up, but you know what I mean. Under chin, boobs, all that good stuff is gonna look bigger. And then your eyes, which you actually want to be in focus and be the highlight of the situation, those are going to be smaller. So this is a recipe for distortion. So how do we fix it? Well, we want to lift things up so that the actual camera is in our eye line. And then we want to angle, if you look at the angle of this computer here, it's tipped a little bit forward. And just, I mean, it's a micro tip, like you can barely even see it. But what that's doing is that's emphasizing what's closer is the top of my face, what I want to be emphasized. I want you to focus on my eyes, my mouth, and then lowering, minimizing a little bit down below, because you know, no matter how wonderful your boobs are, you don't necessarily want them to be the star of the show, right? So thinking about lifting up your computer and angling it just a tiny bit. All right, so that is what I have today about how to look good. But let's dig into how to show up in a way where people would want to see you. And not to toot my own horn, but this is the piece of feedback I get on my YouTube. And if you go into my comments, I'm really grateful. I have some awesome people who watch my channel, but this is the piece of feedback that I get over and over again, is that about my personality, that they love me, that they feel like they know me, all of this kind of stuff. And none of it is specific to me. You are perfectly capable of doing it yourself. It's just understanding a few core things that we're going to talk about. So one is this story, and this is one of my favorite stories. I don't know if you've heard it, but in 1955, Marilyn Monroe, in the height of her Marilyn Monroe-ness, did an article for the New York Times. And so she rode around New York with a writer and a photographer. And they're just chatting. Nobody is at all aware that they're on the subway, that they're walking next to Marilyn Monroe, right? And you know, now for us, you're like, are you kidding me? But yeah, they had no idea. So then she looks at the writer and she asks, do you want to see her? And of course the writer's like, yeah. She like fluffs herself up, changes her body language, and all of a sudden she embodies Marilyn. And then it's a feeding frenzy. Everybody is just like, oh my gosh, it's Marilyn, right? What this illustrates, and I think is so powerful, is that charisma isn't something you're born with. It isn't something that only some people have. It isn't something that's on all the time. It's like a muscle. And with any muscle, it can either be weaker or stronger. It can either be activated or deactivated. And it's something that you can grow over time. So we're going to talk about how. If you aren't familiar with this book, it is amazing. It's called The Charisma Myth. And it was really, I think I read it about 8 years ago now, and it was just so transformative, because for me, I was really charismatic as a child. I was a performer, all of this stuff. And as what happens in middle school and high school, I got beat down a little bit, and I lost touch with that charisma. And then I felt like I was trying too hard to get people to like me, and I just lost my way. And then in my 20s, when I read this book, it clicked, like, oh my gosh, I understand what I've been doing. I understand how I can turn this on. And now I feel like, and it shows up in my videos, that I'm connected to that charismatic energy. Now that doesn't mean if I am doing a grocery store run at 10:30 p.m., which is late for me, and I run into somebody, it doesn't mean that my charisma is going to necessarily be turned on. I can still be like, you know, like just totally out of it. But I know now that I can actively turn it on and really embody that and be connected to it. So what Olivia explains in that book is that a charisma is a combination of three factors. One is power. The second is presence. And the third is warmth. So we're going to talk about these three right now. And I have a little bit of, it's a little cold here today, so my nose is running a little bit. Oh, okay. If you're not familiar with Power over here, she's Claire Underwood from the show on Netflix that was amazing, House of Cards, right? And her character is somebody who could, just staring at you, turn you to stone. Right? She's that archetype of that super powerful, make people quake kind of energy. And she was super charismatic. Sometimes it was turned up so much that it wasn't, but other times you could see when she added a little bit of presence or warmth in, it was just like, whoa, people were drawn to her, right? So in this case, this character is leaning on power, but obviously has these other mixes. Now, when we think about somebody who really leans on presence, we can think about Lisa Lang. And if you're not familiar with her, she is, oh, I love Shelley and Regina. Claire's the best, a beast. And yeah, she's the best, she's a beast, she's all the things. Lisa Lang, who's an amazing investigative journalist. And when you go back, she actually did a series, I think pretty recently, that I saw on Netflix or somewhere, where like she was doing ayahuasca in Peru, like just cool stuff. But she has this way of you feel like you're in a vortex. Like you can tell that she is there. She is with you. She is like really deeply wanting to understand. And that is that crux of presence. If you've ever been with somebody that like when you sit down and they're like, tell me more, and they like lean in and you're like, oh, like, yeah, I'm really interesting right now. Like they really care. That's somebody really leveraging presence. Now, the third factor is warmth. And of course, we all know and love Oprah. And again, Oprah has all of these things, right? Because there's no disputing that she's powerful, that she has presence. But really, she leads more often than not with warmth, right? She's the one that you want to bake cookies with, that you want to pet your hair when you're like crying about your breakup. Like she is that person that you feel like you can be your raw, vulnerable self with. And she's such a great embodiment of that. So these are these three factors, and really it's a matter, you can think of them as dials of how do you turn them up, turn them down, and really think about what your charisma mix is. I'll use myself in an example. Like I said, when I was a kid, I was just like, blah, 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 very out there, always in front, in baton, and in acting and all of these things. And I intimidated people a lot. And I dominated a lot in all of these things. And you mix that with my bone structure, which is a little scary. I used to be called alien face when I was little, amongst other delightful things. I just intimidated people. I had a lot of power and not a lot of the other two. And it didn't help when I was really rocking the commercial photography before I committed to doing so as me and really, really leaning into myself, doubling down on who I was. I was trying to play the commercial photography game like the boys, right? So I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to show up, whatever. And for me, because I feel like everybody has a series of life meditations, I feel like one of mine is power. And I think part of that is being gay, being mixed Black, being a woman, all of these things. Like I'm constantly in my life, I can see this theme coming up again and again between trying to figure out how to feel power in situations of powerlessness, how to empower others. Like it's just something that's around. So I'm also drawn and create a lot of these images where people are really leaning into this power. I realized that whilst that was operating for me in a certain way, there was this level of connectedness that I wasn't achieving with people. It wasn't really aligning with my goals. And I think because I was leveraging a type of charisma that's more like, I mean, not to put myself in the same conversation as Madonna, but just go with me for a second. That's a little more like Madonna, right? That like, she's amazing and you love her. But you're also like not sure if you would want her to come to your baby shower because she's scary, right? I was leaning with that type of energy. And I really wanted to balance that a little bit. So as you'll notice, like my picture for this and everything, I've started really turning up my warmth dial. And so I want you to think about this. What are your dials and how can you really start playing with them? Now, I'm going to give you some help, right? So if you decided that, okay, power is something you want to turn up a little bit more, some things you can do is you can nod less. Nodding is something that creates connection, but it's actually a subservient nonverbal cue. And as women, we do this a lot. So nodding less, taking up more space, and this can be physically, but it can also be in a conversation. It can also be showing your work, lots of different areas. Practicing power poses. So Amy Cuddy, Harvard researcher, amazing TED Talk about power poses. You can think of like the classic Wonder Woman or the dude bro with his hands behind his back and his feet on the desk. All of these poses actually activate hormone pathways that get you to feel and emanate more power. Deep breathing. One thing that I think we know intuitively that we may not actively think about is that when our sympathetic nervous system is engaged, this is the fight, flight, or freeze, we immediately get more into the shoulder breath, right? Where we're like, and that just keeps this loop of this kind of prey animal vibes, right? Which happens if you have anxiety, if you don't want to speak up, all of these things. So being conscious about deepening that breath, getting in touch with your diaphragm, it's that side belly breathing like you're pregnant, and really anchoring that and slowing that down. That will really get you in touch with that kind of power. And lastly, connecting with your chest voice. So if you haven't had singing, you might not know, but we have different ranges of voice, right? We have like the nasal one that's up here, and we have all these different voices, but your chest voice is the one with the most resonance. You can think of Obama as like a great example of like a chest voice kind of person. Not that you need to sound like somebody else, but if you're really deep, breathing deeply and going slow, you can connect with that deeper resonance, and that's going to emanate more power. Now, if presence is your thing, taking the attention off of yourself, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but taking it off of yourself, really helpful. To toe wiggle, any sort of somatic thing that brings you back into your body can help you anchor yourself back out of the future, past, wherever you're living. Looking at eye color, this is a great tactic if you're talking to a person and your brain is kind of, you can look at their eye color, and that gives you this warm, open, soft gaze. That's really amazing. And then focus on your mission. Focus on what you're trying to do instead of yourself and your experience, and you're critiquing yourself and you're judging yourself and all that kind of stuff. Lastly, warmth. Resting bitch face check. Check it. Make sure that when you're listening, you know, when you're thinking about something else, your face isn't like this. Because that's how my face rests, right? Actively getting in touch with this one. I love this. Family pride. One thing that I was taught by an amazing entrepreneur named Julia Parsley, I love her. I won't tell you the long story because we don't have time, but she said that one of the things she does is she imagines that that person, whomever it is a family member. And all of a sudden, she's connected with that sense of pride. That even if they suck as a musician or whatever, well, I don't like to say suck, right? Like they're earlier on in their journey and they haven't really hit like the good part of it yet. And it's really connecting with that energy. So you emanate with that kind of warmth and pride. Remembering it's authenticity over perfection. The more we try to pent up, the more we fall into that professional trap of like, oh, I need to be this way, this way, this way. The more we're going to create that lack of connectedness. So choosing moments of authenticity. We're also going to talk more about this. And smiling. Smiling is the best way. I've trained myself to smile a lot because my face is so scary otherwise, but really smiling is super, super helpful. All right. So thinking about and asking yourself, what's my charisma mix? And how can I play with my dials? And also thinking that your dials might be different in different situations. If you're negotiating something, you're in a group of men, you might lean more into power and presence. If you're talking with a circle of women that you know are a little vulnerable and nervous about public speaking, you might lean more into warmth, right? It's figuring out what that charisma mix is for you. Next is really important, and this is what I love. It's what I came up with. It's my baby, and I'm actually working on an in-depth experience to get you in touch with what this is. You'll notice down at the bottom of the screen, it says giagoodrich.com/WIB, Women in Business. And if you click that, you'll get early access to this. I'm going to go over with you what it is, but yeah, I'm just really excited. I have designers working on it. I have an animator. It's going to be great. So what is a cultural constellation? It is your identity, your experiences, your values. And when you mix those three things together, you are 100% unique. It's only you who exists in the world. And this is where you turn off competition. So when we're talking about identity, we're talking about your ethnicity, your cultural background, your gender, your sexuality, your ability, and neurodiversity, to name a few. There are many other things that have to do with your identity, right? your experiences, your family makeup, obstacles, interests, expertise, your career, anything like that that has to do with the things you've lived through. Values, passions, your politics, your priorities, the things that you believe, all of that stuff. When you mix all of this together, you, I can tell you, are inherently unique and amazing, and it's just about owning that and leaning into that that will change the game for you, especially when it comes to showing up in video. So ask yourself, what is my cultural constellation? What are these things about me that are interesting, that are part of my story? Like I said, for me, it's that I have ADHD. I talk about that a lot. It's my cultural, ethnic makeup, being a mixed kid and growing up in between. It's about having been the star in baton, always in front, and then being somebody who, you know, got beat down and totally picked on in high school and rebounding from all that. It's all of that stuff that makes me me and allows me, as long as I lean into that, allows other people to connect with me. This is how you become a magnet. And whether or not it's a magnet for future clients, a magnet for job hirers, a magnet for podcast listeners, whatever it is, this is how you become a magnet. It's through that specificity, because really what you're doing is you're creating forks in the road, this way, that way. And this is a big misconception when it comes to branding, because we have this understanding that somehow we should try to be all things to all people, right? We should try to be Apple, where everybody connects with us and loves us. Really, that is not how you are going to create that kind of personal brand that resonates with people. There's this adage in storytelling, and of course I'm going to butcher it, but something about the more specific your story is, the more universal it is. Right? If you start on the opposite end, trying to make it appeal to everyone, you won't get very far. It's really about that specificity that resonates, something about that exact, yes, I might not have had that same experience, but I understand those emotions, those feelings, whatever it is. And what you're doing is you're giving people an opportunity to turn toward you, right? So me, I'm gay. If somebody has an issue with that, I'm giving them an opportunity to turn into it and be like, cool, or turn away and be like, nope. And I have to be okay with the fact that, like, they weren't for me. They're not going to resonate with my energy. And it's better that I am actively attracting and repelling and sifting through that quickly so I can create an audience that is 100% on board with me and other people who are out of it. And this is a little bit of a tangent, but this is the secret to trolls. That I know a lot of people are nervous about trolls and like people saying craptastic stuff. The more specific about who you are, the less you attract people like that, which, because you're not trying to be all things to all people. So people aren't really tending to pick things out with you. All right. So with authenticity, we're asking ourselves, because this is really the key in all of this, right? How would I show up if I knew I would be unconditionally accepted and appreciated for who I am? How would I show up? This is the question we need to be asking ourselves, without the like, oh my gosh, who does she think she is? All that kind of like nervous stuff. Oh my gosh, I don't have enough followers. All of that stuff that our brain lies to us. Connecting with that, how would I show up? And being part of that is being real about your experience. So for me, you can see my background, and in this slide, it's the same background I always have. But recently in a YouTube video, I was talking and I got on this twinge and I was just like, yeah, I should show you behind the scenes, because I can keep it together right in the frame. But usually when I'm filming and everything, it looks like a gale force wind has blown through and a gremlin has unleashed all the chaos, right? And that is the reality of my life off and on. And I can tell you that people have commented on that video specifically saying, I'm subscribing because you showed us your messy life. And I love that. You're real, and I will follow you forever because of that. And this is one of those things, I felt vulnerable doing it, right? Because I'm like, I don't want to show people my mess. But I know that being authentic will create those deep connections. And that's really how you build that audience, build that leverage, build that context for who you are. Authentic is just being true to one's personality, spirit, and character. It's not hard. Well, let's see. It's simple, not hard, right? We know how to do it. but it's not necessarily the most fun thing for us to actually do. But the more you do that, the more powerful showing up in video will be for you. So how do we do this practically? Take the attention off of yourself. And this is in acting. This happens a lot. We talk about this because in my last lifetime, I was an actor. I was in like C-, D+ horror movies and commercials and everything. But they teach you to not be in your head, because then it's bad acting and you'll be all weird about how you're saying the line. It's putting your attention on what you're doing, what the motivation is, who's that person you're talking to, all of that. Same thing. Take the attention off of yourself. Really, it's not about you. Because I hate to burst your bubble, but everybody is so wrapped up in their stuff that they aren't going to be thinking and judging you. And you have to think about trading time for your content, right? So it's really about how can you serve people and what question can you answer? How can you help people? We're all narcissistic, right? We're all insecure. We all are so preoccupied with our experience that we're not going to judge. If we do judge, it's because we're insecure about something ourselves and it really doesn't have to do with you. And if we take our focus off what others think, we are finally free to be magnetic. Because I can tell you, your story might be like, oh, I'm too old, oh, I'm too big, oh, my nose is too weird, whatever. I mean, every day I have to look and notice that like I have a 6 head. And some days I'm like, oh my gosh, my forehead is so distracting, la 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 la. Nobody cares. Did you even notice it? Here, type in the chat if you notice my 6 head, right? Who cares? So I want you to focus on value. And everybody has a superpower area. And the way you connect with that is really thinking what's so easy to me, comes naturally to me that I don't even have to think about it. It seems silly even sharing it or charging for it because like, of course it's so easy. That's the thing, right? That's the thing that you want to share because I guarantee you it's not like that for anybody else. And then you think, what would make somebody trade their time for this, right? Making it value-based, value-driven. I'm going to talk to a friend. This is my secret, right? Is talking to a friend. Now this is us in 2010 when it was cool to be neon dykes and have crazy haircuts that were jagged and severe. But this is my friend Sis. She's a hairstylist. She actually gave me that haircut. She's amazing. And when I'm looking at the black vacuous lens, I'm talking to her. And that's how that shortcut to authenticity. I'm talking to my friend. Because she's amazing, she's smart, she's talented, she's wonderful, but she also has a superpower that's different from mine. So I have stuff to talk to her about, to teach her. And she loves me, and I don't feel judged by her. And so I just connect with that energy, talk to her, and then I show up as I am. Thank you. Oh my gosh, you are all so funny. Joan, Brandy, Renee, Shelly, Catherine, you guys are all so awesome. Okay, so Shay, can you just pop in the chat and let me know what time it is? Because I wanted to try to get to questions. And I have a few more slides left, but I wanted to try to get some questions in there. And I think we started a little bit late, but I'm not 100% sure. Oh, see, I love this. Y'all are so kind. And this is the point, right? You weren't thinking about the things that I'm insecure about, but you were thinking about, just being kind, which is amazing. I love you. Okay, so I only have a minute. Great, wonderful. Let me just get back to a couple. Let's see. I had so much to give you, and that's just who I am. So you'll have to follow me on YouTube for more. The one thing I'm going to leave you is this secret booster tip, okay? This bonus hack. Ribbon drawer. Now, when we're all kids, because you're going to be insecure and weird about showing up on video. That is just a given, right? So how do we circumvent that, right? And as kids, we all had ribbons. We all had things that our moms would say for us for participating, whatever. But as adults, we don't have that. And that's the problem. So a ribbon drawer is, and I actually have on my phone an album where I save these wonderful comments that people share with me. And they make me feel weird screenshotting it, feel like a dork. But this is the moment, right? When I'm in my head, whatever, that it reminds me, okay, it really isn't about me. It's about helping these people. And people are generous and awesome and wonderful. And having that in my back pocket is the thing that kicks me out of my own brain. So I really encourage you to get your own ribbon drawer. It's literally just an album on your phone with screenshots. I'll tell you this, everything is a race to 100. And you need to have horse blinders on your journey. You need to stop focusing on the metrics, the success, all this other stuff, and just focus on getting through to 100. Now, what do I mean by that? anytime you do something 100 times, you are approaching mastery, right? You look at any YouTuber, the first video, if they're brave enough to keep it on there, myself included, was not good, right? The more you do it, the better you are going to be. So what I say, when I say the race to 100, what I mean is just try to move as fast as you can through that. And lastly, from the great Bill Withers, amazing jazz musician, you can't get to wonderful without passing through all right. So try to shortcut and just land yourself at success. Be willing to go through the journey and suck a little bit and persist, because I can tell you, the more you show up on video, the more you sparkle with your amazingness that only you are, the better you will be, the more leverage you'll have, the fuller your life will be, and the more wonderful you'll feel about who you are. So thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here, and you are all so amazing. Yes, I love you all. Yay!
I am going to have to re-watch that session so many times just to be able to all of that incredible information.